This project is on opioids, from painkillers to addictive drugs, and the effects of using them. So, introduction. In the beginning of the mid-1990s, the usage of opioids was really high because it was introduced to the market, and doctors didn't really know the side effects for using them. And it was really the only option for reducing chronic pain, and that's why the doctors prescribed patients this drug. And these were marketed as painkillers that eased pain with cancer and chronic pain for accidents and work injuries. This allowed anyone to use it, and the drug was super addictive, so that's why many people continued using this drug. And then once people use this drug, they turn to selling the drug to make some money, and this is where the illegal market started with opioid abuse. So the statistics on the abuse. So roughly 21 to 29% of people prescribed opioids for chronic pain misuse them. And in October 2017, the U.S. federal government declared the opioid epidemic a public health emergency. The beginning of this crisis began in the 90s, when the healthcare industry deemed these products as non-habit forming. So 4 to 6% who misuse this prescription transition to using heroin as well. And the percent that increased from July 2016 to September 2017 was about 30%. And who's most likely to use opioids? Well, studies have shown that in one study, 12,000 patients were prescribed, and only 4 of those patients became dependent on opioids. And patients typically use these because their quality of life increased from using these drugs, but on the downside, their tolerance grew. And this is why doctors started to prescribe even larger doses to patients, which cause greater side effects. Next slide. Veterans and opioid abuse. So a lot of the major population who use opioids are veterans, and the number of deaths due to this drug is far greater than the number of soldiers killed in Iraq and Vietnam. The VA seems to be fueling this issue by over-prescribing opiates to its veterans, and the manufacturer of the drug, Oxycontin, gave the VA pain management team $200,000 while implying that these drugs rarely cause addiction, which is not true because these drugs are very addictive. And another thing I would add is that there's different locations in the U.S. that misuse opioid abuse. And it's prominent in the Midwest, the Appalachians, and New England. And these are connections between obesity, disability, chronic pain, and depression that are linked to the abuse of opioids. And poverty and substance also intertwine with each other and are reinforced by mental disorders and unstable housing. So these are all examples of why people start to use them. So there's also effects on the digestive system. So once you digest an opiate, They are very slow digesting, so they can lead to constipation, which will be very uncomfortable for you, and can lead to also nausea and vomiting, which a lot of people seem to go through these effects. And respiratory system effects. Opiates can cause respiratory depression, which can cause slow breathing and result in death. And that's why when people misuse opiates and take too many, they die from slow breathe, from their lungs pretty much coming together, and they can't breathe anymore. So, and effects on the nervous system. So, opiates can cause greater pain and make you more sensitive. They can also cause motor impairment, and this is for slower movement. So if you took an opiate and you drove a car, it'd be very dangerous because you could possibly crash your car and possibly die. Injecting opiates. So there's many ways you can take opiates, and there's actually 4 types of ways that the CDC categorizes them into. There's synthetic opiates, which are tramadol and fentanyl, heroin, which is an illegal drug synthesized from morphine, natural and semi-synthetic opiates, which are morphine, codeine, oxycodone, and hydrocodone. There's methadone, which is a synthetic opioid used in the treatment of heroin and morphine addiction. And these are all different types of opiates that people use. And injecting them is pretty dangerous because you can come up with Hep C from sharing needles. You could cause veins to collapse from crushing your pills. They could clog your blood vessels, causing organ damage. They can cause infections inside your organs. They can cause your heart to stop and have heart attacks. And you could also contract HIV. So the side effects for using opiates are constipation, nausea, sedation, confusion, hallucinations, sweats, dry mouth, and uncommon side effects, which are for people who usually don't see them, are delirium, seizures, respiratory depression, urinary retention. So to help get rid of this problem would be to improve access to treatment and recovery services, which means like give people better options to, for rehab, and give them more choices to help them cope with the addiction. Provide cutting-edge research on pain addiction. So many researchers are trying to find a better way to help people with chronic pain instead of using opiates, because opiates are so addicting. So they're trying to create a new drug that will not be addictive and will not have these terrible side effects. And then promoting the use of overdose reversing drugs, so helping people not use these overdose drugs and not to take as many for this pain, and to also for the doctors to tell the patients that this drug is addicting, because back in the 90s, as in the slides before, doctors were saying this drug was not addictive, and they're giving their patients more than what they needed and over prescribing, which made the patient's tolerance grow, and which made them even want more. So it's the best way to ease pain, which is what doctors say, and to this day doctors say it's the only pain relieving drug that's the best out there. And these are the references that we used for our sources and information.